we've only just begun. And yes, we've just begun.
Hello everyone, thanks for that. Paul just said to me how much bigger his name was than mine. I said it's all about you today, Paul. So we're looking at the future of agencies.
Yep.
And I could think of no better person to be sat with, seeing as over the past 10 years, I remember you were MPG Media Contacts, head of digital, is that right?
Head of digital, yeah.
2004, and now you last year when you became chief executive of Havas Media, I remember there was a lot of talk at the time that this finally of coming of age of digital and how we have the people who were the digital guys in the back room actually taking control of the bigger, larger media traditional agencies, planning and buying. So, as a starter for 10, what have been the seismic changes over those past 10 years in terms of your own agency structure?
Great question. I would say that what's happened in the last 10 years, to me, feels, when I look back at 2004, it feels like 20 years. It doesn't feel that the increments of time are actually matching kind of the change that's going on. And I think the change between now and 2020 will be even faster. I think that the challenge is all of us keeping up with some of the things Rich has just talked about. The fact that consumers and technology are moving faster than marketing organisations. Startups are moving faster than any established corporate can move. So the seismic changes, I suppose, are in the way that people consume kind of media, because media is no longer just about paid advertising. There are many brands that have been up here already this morning talking about the fact that media and marketing is becoming more organic. So that changes the way a media agency needs to behave. It's not just about going and booking ads. We have to help transform and take clients on the business transformation that Richard just talked about. So our job has changed fundamentally in the space of a decade.
Yeah, I mean, it's good you touched upon that change, because in the new world order of owned and earned media, a lot of people said, well, maybe actually we've moved beyond media agencies. You guys were the media buying houses, right? So
Sure.
You know, what's your role in today's function? So you've had to adapt very quickly behind the scenes.
We have. I think media agencies have to reboot the way they communicate, because we have dramatically invested and changed the way our operations work. I think any media agency boss would say that they do as much non-media work advising on owned and earned channels as they do pay today, yet we're still seen as media buyers. I saw a statistic from Kingston Smith the other day, the accountancy firm for the advertising agency industry, that said employment costs in agencies have gone up by 12%, but new businesses hasn't come in. So agencies have invested, our fees with marketers and brands have generally gone down. So there is a tension between, I guess, the need to adapt and change quickly and the way that we're being paid, largely because we're seen as a commodity. And I genuinely see my organisation not as a media agency, but as a marketing services organisation that is there to provide advice on how to change their business in order to deliver the right messages to the right people at the right time.
Okay, so just without going into too much granular detail, tell us, from an agency point of view, how have you changed that? Well, the silos used to be, you know, TV buying, press planning. I mean, how have you broken down those silos internally?
So the first stages were bringing digital and traditional together very early. MPG, turned into Havas Media, was one of the first agencies to integrate. I ran the digital team. I was very vocal about the need to take the digital team back into the traditional model. My career started in traditional, in understanding audiences, in buying media, and in measurement. A world that every digital person needs to understand, yet quite often the language of digital is too technical, it's too focused around granular things. So the first thing was make sure that both sides can actually speak the same language, bring teams together that are essentially doing the same thing. So to me, TV is vision these days. You've got people doing video, you've got people doing TV broadcast buying, and then you've got people buying programmatic video. All of those people are buying AV, they're buying vision, so you can't have separate teams all over the place. And when it comes to owned and earned within the group, Havas Media Group is very fortunate, which is the team I run, to have creative assets like Cake, Havas Sports and Entertainment, and data assets like DBI and analytics business that we bought. And those experts fundamentally changed the role that we play. Our data business works with commercial people, works with people putting systems into an organisation. So they're more akin to some of the management consultants that Richard talked about than a media buying agency. And that is the high value work that I want my agency to do. I want them to provide the consultancy that a management consultant would, but with the deep understanding of people. Steve Hatch talked about it earlier, that the deep understanding of people and ideas and creativity that people in agencies have.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Steve Hatch. So obviously, former leader of MEC, now the regional manager for UK and Ireland at Facebook. His appointment is being perceived, isn't it, very much as Facebook's sort of coming of age in terms of waking up to the agency landscape and what media agencies and creative agencies bring to the table. Sure. Would you say Google are still as reliant on the agencies? Or I mean, I'm hearing some anecdotal evidence that with building their own DSPs and with the traction YouTube has now in the video market, that actually Google is all set to be able to bypass agencies altogether and just deal direct with clients.
Okay, it's a big question, right?
Yeah.
And sure, I heard Mr. Sorrell talked about this earlier. I
Did
would
he
say
paranoid? Is Mr. Sorrell, are you paranoid?
I think healthy paranoia is always a good thing. Google has clearly disrupted much of the ecosystem and will continue to try and do so, which is a very good thing for all of us because many things needed to change. They have heavily invested in the last 5 years in being more agency friendly and invested in research and tools, but some of their behavior doesn't necessarily match the kind of the storytelling around the importance of agencies. Okay. But that, to me, is an agency problem as much as it is a market problem. We have to make sure we reinvent and that we have people like analytics people that can talk about DSPs and DMPs, that has people that can genuinely create content in-house that could sit on YouTube. Because otherwise, if an advertiser or a client wants that, they'll go and get it from someone. So it's an open market. If Google feels that they can step into that and nobody else provides it, then why shouldn't they? Facebook the same. So agencies have to wake up. The industry, the media industry, in my mind, has to wake up, both media owner and agency side, to move quicker, move at the speed of a startup or move at the speed of a Google or a Facebook, because otherwise there is a danger that certain agencies or certain parts of agencies will become irrelevant. Yeah. It's a fact. Yeah. It is a truth. Rich has just shown you a whole story that shows how dramatically the world has changed. Yeah. I think there needs to be a lot more change. I think there needs to be a lot more leadership change. I think we can't continue to have lots of separate industry bodies talking about individual media anymore. Twitter is promoting collaboration and open source. I think that has to be the future, because if you're a marketing director, you don't want to have 25 different conversations about 25 different channels. You don't want to have to spend lots of time knitting things together. You want to pay people to join the conversation up. Okay, that's interesting. Let's go back over some of that. So what did you say about the trade bodies? You think there should be one trade body to rule them all? I mean, what were we saying? No, I think that in the future we need to see more of those bodies coming together to promote collaboration and the whole coming back together. My agency, other agencies are thinking about what does the new model for the agency look like. It won't be full service, because full service is the past. We should only look forward. But it will be, how do we orchestrate the best resources from across an entire agency group? That will be media people, it will be creative people, data people, technology people, possibly content creators. How do we cast those people together to do something relevant? Now, that means that people can't continue to constantly talk in their own silos. The only way our agency came back together was to kill the silo that was media context, retire it, put digital into the heart of the agency, and then we've reinvented ourselves as Havas Media. So we have retired the things that were relevant in the past, but no longer are relevant going forward. Yeah, it's very interesting. And you'll see with the media owners as well, there's more collaboration than ever before out there. We saw with the Media Week Awards this year that you have, and I think maybe this is the influence of the big tech giants, but you'll have Bauer working with Guardian, working with Global, working with all these. So how do you adapt as an agency when you see
media owners, which traditionally used to be handled by individual departments, all saying we can work together on that brief. We can do this for Unilever, and we can do this for
I think
whoever else. I mean,
it requires ultimately it requires a top-down change of leadership. It requires people that don't think in an old-school, siloed, egotistical way, because agencies are classic organisations that are all about themselves and their own agenda and their own fame. The reality is, going forward, in order to do the best work, you will need the best partners around you. You will need to encourage and be generous with talent from all different parts of the agency universe. And hopefully, we'll structure a group that means most of that happens within Havas Media Group. But not all of it will. We'll have to bring partners in, and those partners have to be partners that add something to the overall kind of mix.
A lot of the older practitioners in the media space will say that's all well and good, and it sounds great, and people will invite you onto stages to talk a great game. But actually, when you get down to it, the problem is with agencies, you're the middleman. And so unless you're carving out exactly what you do, what your space is, what you bring to the table other than other agencies or other media owners, then it's very hard to work out a payment model. I mean, is that something you've had to deal with at Havas Media?
Yes. I mean, the payment model, I think, is the biggest friction in this. If media agencies want to move from being buyers in a commodity to being consultants, shall we say, marketing services consultants, then the conversation needs to become about value, not about cost. Cost is what you put in, value is what you get out. And I think there's too much of an obsession in most global pitches about what the cost grids will deliver, rather than, if you're going to help me transform my business, that might mean changing my marketing structure, it might be putting certain kind of experts into my business to help transform, data people, content people, then what value does that drive out of the end? The value there is much bigger than a 10% saving on media costs. Okay,
you mentioned data and content there. We should probably quickly touch upon two of the hot topics at the moment. First one being programmatic buying and what that means.
Couldn't possibly have a session with media agency
without mentioning programmatic, and the other one will be native advertising, which I'll quickly come on to. But I mean, programmatic for buying and trading initially. I mean, how do you see agencies responding to that? I mean, do you understand why clients are nervous? Because it seems like there's not enough transparency in terms of how the deals, who's buying what, for how much.
It's transforming the industry, and it will continue to. It's very nascent. I think that the title of this conference is that we're only just starting. The industry will become more technology and data-driven, fact. So everyone needs to get used to that. That will benefit creative people as much as media people, because better insights will come out. And it will move out of digital into out of home, into television, and people just need to accept that. That does not mean ideas and creativity are dead. It should enhance the ability to deliver data and creativity. And on your point about transparency, it's an area that's very misunderstood. And I don't think anyone's done a very good job of demystifying it.
Well, the language doesn't help, does it?
It doesn't. So agencies need to take responsibility for demystifying it and allowing clients in to see why it's a better model. Because you've got two models in advertising and media buying. Aggregate things and buy smartly through kind of data and optimization, or buy it line by line. You can buy it line by line, but it'll cost you a big premium. Programmatic is simply the right-hand side that's existed in media forever, and it's using data and automation as a smarter way to trade. You can make quicker decisions, and you can ensure that you're reaching the right audiences. There's a lot of wastage in media today.
Okay, but when you hear stories about clients then saying, okay, well, we'll start creating trading desks ourselves, are you worried again about being left out of that loop?
Some brands will do that, and some brands are probably data literate enough and technology literate enough to do it, but I think it's a very small percentage.
Okay.
Search was taken in-house by many brands 7-8 years ago, and most of it's come back out to agencies. Agencies ultimately understand people. They are great at understanding people and great at coming out with insight and ideas. That is something that I genuinely think marketers need. And a management consultant might be able to come in and advise on technology and systems, but they never will translate that back to people. And go back to Steve's comment, we're in a people business. It's a human capital business about understanding people and why people do what they do. Yeah,
quite right. Okay.
I think we're being told that big session oversign.
Well, look, let me just two more very quick questions then. Would you recommend...
He's not taking the hint, is he?
Would you recommend the media business so young graduates today, they're coming out, you can go to all these exciting tech firms, these exciting sort of financial operations. would you still recommend the media business as a place to go?
Of course. I think you have more variety, more opportunity to move around and learn in an agency than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Go to a tech company if you want some quick short-term equity, because obviously a startup or a tech business will give you something you won't get in an agency. But that's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
If you want longevity and you want to develop, go to an agency. I wrote the job spec for my last 3 roles myself. I didn't wait for them, I wrote the job specs for Head of Digital, MD and CEO. I think people have got so much opportunity, but they just need to take initiative. They need to step in and lean into the conversation and make their own opportunities.
I mean, talking about taking the initiative, you're known for being the most proactive media agency leader on Twitter. Now, it's a client-facing business. Some leaders are a bit reticent about putting their views out there and having a profile. I mean, how do you justify your Twitter activity and how do you think it helps?
To me, Twitter is a very valuable space. I learn every time I go on Twitter. I learn from the US, from influencers I have no personal relationship with, but that I meet on Twitter. And it's a way for me to communicate with my own staff, with my customers, but also to engage in a conversation with people I'm never going to meet. So the most of the marketing community is on it. Not everyone's in it, but in the conversation. It's the best targeting tool I can think of to target people in the marketing community, yet the vast majority of people haven't seized that because I think they find it a difficult space to understand.
I think they're worried as well about comeback. Okay, final question. What keeps you awake at night?
What keeps me awake at night? I'd go right back to where I started, not changing fast enough. My mantra, which I stole from Facebook. Oh look, we're starting all over again. Rewind. My mantra that I stole from Facebook is done is better than perfect, which is a startup type mantra. There's a lot of talk in this industry, and I think there needs to be physical change and action. And that's why I spend so much time on Twitter talking about the need for change.
Paul, that's been great. Don't underestimate how hard it is to have one person firing questions at you on the spot like this. So many thanks for that.
It's a pleasure.
Great.
We've only just begun.